Good morning, good afternoon maybe, or good evening, depending on where you're watching this. Right now I'm pressing the coffee down because we're getting ready for it. And of course, I know why you're all here today, and I'm not flattering myself, it's not for me, because today we have Will Harris right here of the Sea Explorer Yacht Club de Monaco in the house. You can see him here on the back of my screen already. And we're going to do a tech talk about all the beautiful goodies and technology and, well, the stuff that we're all interested in around this great race that we're, kind of all in together right now. So I think, Will, you also have something of a coffee or something over there, right?
I do have a coffee. So
There we go. Okay, well, let me pour this here for a second. Here we go. Are you ready, guys? Are you ready? Are you ready? Yes? Here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Cheers.
Nice. Cheers. Okay, well, Will, welcome to the show. Super cool that you wanted to come on so early in the morning. You're in England right now, as I understand. Is that tough? Because I think previously you probably would have been in France in Les Sables. How is that? How have you been holding up to be a little bit more distant from the race in that sense?
Yeah, it's been, most of my year's been spent in France, helping Boris get ready for the start of the Vendée Globe.
Hmm.
But quite honestly, it's been a nice break to to get back to England for a bit, and I can
Yeah.
track the race from the comfort of my own home, which is fantastic. Thanks to technology, we can see Boris's every movement basically,
Yeah.
while
Yeah.
he's sailing around the world. So I can't complain about that at all. Drinking
Mhm.
coffee on a desk is perfect.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, we've come a long way, I guess, with the boat.
Just another day in the office. What's going on, Will?
Yeah, so here we are in the doldrums. We've been sailing through it for the last 200 miles or so. Tricky conditions, not much wind, sort of 5 or 6 knots like this, but enjoying a bit of downtime, enjoying a coffee every now and then. Only one major breakage is my little handle here, so we can't complain too much, and hopefully we get out into finer winds soon, into the trade winds.
Is there something to say for almost splitting up the fleet into like three IMOCA subclasses because we see such very interesting differences between the boats within the race. They all have their strengths, they all have their weaknesses, but you do kind of see this almost a three-part show in a way with the kind of previous generation boats, those who have added some foils, added some new doodads to go faster, and then we have the really the top of the line, the newest boats, and the differences between those. What do you think on that?
Yeah, I mean it's always tricky to put sort of exact classes. But like you
Mm.
say, we've got the newest generation boats. We've got the newest foilers. One's built after the last Vendée Globe, 2017. So that's what you class as a new boat,
Yeah.
according to
Mhm.
IMOCA.
Yeah.
And those are the Chirales, the Apivia, the Linked Out. I think there's 9 boats in total which were new for this edition of the race.
Yeah.
So that's, I would say, is a class in itself. Then what you've got a couple of foilers, including us, the Explorer Yacht Club de Monaco. We upgraded our boat, which is the X Gitana. It was used in the Gitana in the last race, and we've
Mhm.
put some bigger, beefier foils on it to basically make it, or try to make it, go as fast as these newer generation boats.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, it's shown to be pretty effective in the last.
I think they're pretty close, huh? Like as far as speed potential, it's really not far off.
No, yeah, for sure, and the boats are all pretty close.
Mhm.
Obviously, there are some differences, but mostly as soon as we put these new foils on at the start of this year,
Mhm.
it was a sudden jump out the water. Effectively, suddenly we're flying along. But
Yeah, yeah,
um, we've done that, and so have Initiative's Curse, Sam Davies.
yeah. Mhm.
She also did that.
You've been
Um,
training together also a lot, huh? I heard.
what's that? Sorry.
I heard you guys were also training with Sam a lot.
Yes. So there's a big training school in France called the Paul Finisterre Course à Loge, and
Mhm.
that's sort of a group of 10 IMOCas. We're part of this training group. So we and Sam and us, we were both part of that. So we would all
Mhm.
line up together and try and kind of compare our boats with each other. It's not like
Yeah,
any.
yeah, yeah. That's
No,
interesting to see because Sam and Boris also, battling each other for a good time during this race, pretty close together. So I guess it's nice to also have that from the training experience and carrying that on in the race, kind of being comfortable with pushing each other, which is kind of nice to see.
Yeah, no,
And
exactly.
on that also maybe interesting about the foils, because you made the choice, of course, to upgrade. And I get a lot of questions about what is the difference between, kind of the C-shaped foils that, for example, Alex has gone for, and we have more the kind of the straight foils, and we have kind of a little bit of an in-between shape, let's say, size-wise. Can you talk a little bit about that and your considerations, with Boris's team, obviously, to make a choice for a certain type of foils over another type?
Yeah, I mean, it's the foils is such a complex kind of cutting edge technology at the moment, but the general reason that we have all these different shapes and sizes of foils is basically each kind of designer and each person having their own theory about how the foils will react in different conditions, different what they're actually trying to achieve with the foil. Are they trying to deal with slightly more wavy conditions? Are they trying to make it go faster downwind? Are they trying to generate more writing moment? So the kind of the most notable difference in the foils is these big curved shaped foils that Alex Thompson has, Hugo Boss, and also Arkea Paprick. Seb Simon, they both have these big, absolutely massive C-shaped foils.
Yeah.
Compared to the rest of the other generations of boats, which tend to have kind of a straight shaft with a different variation at the end. And basically, with these C-shaped foils, they tend to offer more lift to the boat, so help lift the boat out of the water, but they generate less righting moment. So what that means is, for things like downwind conditions, where you're trying to lift the boat out of the water without generate too much righting moment, because that's not what you're often trying to achieve downwind. It will help to keep it out of the waves a bit more and potentially be faster downwind. Whereas these other shapes of foils, I guess, are slightly more optimized for righting moment and reaching or upwind angles. But there's so many other things to consider with the shape of the boat, the weight of the boat, and all these sort of things when you are designing your foils. But the reason we chose ours is another boat, Isabelle Josque Maxif, had already built these foils, and they were a 2008 generation boat, I think, and we suddenly saw that they were leaping out the water and foiling just as fast as the boats like Charal and things like this. And we saw that they'd kind of been tested a bit and they seemed fairly reliable, and there was good reviews of them. So that's why we chose to kind of build foils exactly the same shape as they were, because we wanted something that had at least some slight testing. But basically, the difference in the shapes of the foils is the hydrodynamics. It's effectively, if you build an aeroplane wing with a completely different shape to another one, it will be influenced in a different way. You don't see a fighter jet and a Boeing have the same sort of wing shape, and that's effectively the same reasons. It will, with the foils, they bend a lot in the water, to deal with different wave sizes and wave heights, and how much lift they're producing. So this is basically why we have the different shapes, to kind of how they interact with the water. But it's such a new technology. It's no one's really sure what's the most effective one, and until they get in the Southern Ocean, we won't really have the answer as to what the best foil is for the Vendée Globe.
Yeah. Is that also something that, like you're saying, you're in this group, of course, in France also, and it's cool that you're on the technology field, really also competing and maybe often surprising each other. How much is that a part of the pre-race, that you're constantly, well, I won't say spying, but you're constantly looking at each other's boats, of course. Hey, they put a little extra fin there. Hey, what are they doing right there? Like, how much of that is going on? And maybe you can also talk a little bit about the village intrigue, which I think is probably fun for people to hear. Like, does it often happen that you guys will spot something and quickly catch up, or scratch a bit of secret from somebody else in the team to make way?
No, it's an interesting question, that, because it's been it's not what you'd expect, I guess, so much, because it's everyone's happy to share with what technologies they are using on the boat, but when it comes to design, generally everyone's quite secretive. I think when everyone's thinking of the next foils they're going to build on the next boat, it's generally quite a secret process. When it comes to things like our communications technology, or how do you use your routing software on the boat, that's something that's definitely shared within the training camp and actual life and sailing on board the boat. But when it comes to the actual design and stuff, I think it's a bit more hush hush, I guess. And there's kind of some things which are kind of seen as, everyone should share this, and it's it's something to do with safety or something that's helpful collectively. And then there's the performance side of, I'm building a shape of foils that's more like this, or my boat's going to be this shape. And we've really radical designs, and the IMOCA is completely different.
Definitely,
pretty crazy, and every boat is looking different. So it's interesting.
So it's a little bit of a shock every time somebody unveils a new boat with a new concept. The whole field goes, "Oh no! Now we have to compete with this new stuff, and what's it going to do?" Right?
It's been very funny the last year, because we're within our team, and obviously with coronavirus as well, we've all been. It's all we've had time to talk about is kind of the latest boats come out, talk about every little detail of it. Why have they done this? Why have they done that? What do we think? And until you actually go and see them line up these last few weeks, it's really hard to tell what's the most effective. And for the skipper as well on board, it could be a very fast boat, but maybe life on board and is very complicated. Maybe they're having lots of problems with the shape of the boat or issues that we don't really know about. But so that's also a pretty important part of it, making sure that you can actually live in a half comfortable way and half practical way, and as well as being fast. So
that's also something that I really wanted to talk about, because you've of course been one of the privileged ones to sail one of these extreme boats very often and train on it. And how because I think that's also very nice for everybody to kind of live that a little bit through your experience. Like, how would you describe the difference between sailing, let's say, a normal, fast sailing boat, but non-foiling, to, you just mentioned already earlier when you said, well, when I first went on the foiling boat, it just leaped out of the water, and, you kind of don't know what's going on, and it's like really quite extreme. Can you tell us a little bit about how you experienced that, and also what really is the difference as a sailor, riding one of these boats as opposed to a normal non-foiling boat, in the behavior, the trimming and all this type of aspect? Like, how does it really change the whole experience of sailing in your view?
It's some situations it's fairly similar. In other ways, it's completely different. When we first got the boat foiling and going in sort of the most uncomfortable conditions on the boat, which is 90-degree reaching, it's how uncomfortable and bouncy it is. It's just, you can't really describe it until you actually go and feel it. You just have to cling on, basically. I remember trying to cook that first meal with the jet boil, and you just end up pouring the boiling water all over yourself and everywhere, just because it's so bouncy and difficult. And in that sense, you really have to kind of just get used to it, get used to the noises. The noises is very loud. It's and especially downstairs when you're in the bunk, it feels like sounds like the boat is constantly hitting into something that's not water, and pieces. But you just have to kind of trust that it's not. And
I guess the surface tension at that speed is so hard also in the water that it's almost like skidding across concrete or something.
No, exactly. And in terms of actual trimming and other aspects, kind of performance aspect, compared to our old, because we had smaller foils in 2019, and now we've got the bigger foils, there was a massive change in our sail, kind of our sail choices in different wind speeds and wind angles, and generally we are massively reducing the sail area, because once you're foiling, you don't have need for that extra sail area, because you're going that bit faster, and also it just increases the load having more sail area up. So that was quite a big change for us, always having to reduce the sail size and sail plan, and we've kind of had to rethink our sail wardrobe altogether. That's quite a massive part of this edition of the Vonek Globe, is what sails everyone brought, because no one brought the same sails really.
What did Boris bring, actually? Because I want to get back to this foiling experience, but maybe let's take one little side note.
Yeah, okay.
What is your sail wardrobe right now on the boat?
So firstly, you always have the J2. You have the J2 in the mainsail. Every boat will have that. We have a J3, which is a smaller head sail for upwind and reaching. And then our next biggest one is the J1.5. So this is from the bow of the boat, not the bowsprit, and that goes to a fractional. So halfway, 2/3 of the way out the mast.
Yeah.
And then we have the Code Zero, which we had last time as well. That's a sail that we kept the same. And then we have a C6, which is a fractional downwind sail, and then a C3, which is basically a big furling Jernica. So the biggest changes we've made this time is we don't have the spinnaker anymore. So spinnaker's for full-on VMG running. And we have this new J1.5 sail. So basic advantages of the J1.5 is it's a very wide range sail above 11 knots wind speed. We can use it for downwind conditions. We can use it for reaching. We can use it for slight, kind of close fetching conditions as well. But it's basically a fantastic all-round sail for foiling conditions. And
okay.
In between. The spinnaker is.
Is there a particular aspect to the shape of that which makes it so suited for foiling? Then, like, is it extra flat or extra forgiving? What makes it so good there?
Yeah. It's basically just how all round shape, size it is. So if you compare our J2 is about 110 square meters, and this J1.5 is about 132 square meters. So it's a bit bigger than the J2. And with that, and with it being further forward as well, it allows you to sail downwind with effectively a sail that's more like a jib. We've hit our top speed with this sail, and it's very good all round. And as well as that, you can put the J3 on the inside of the J1.5. And so when you want to sail lower, or you need a little bit more sail area, it works very nicely with this other sail in the middle. And I think as well, it must be, the balance of the effort on the boat. The foils, a big aspect of the foils as well, making them go as fast as possible, is the weight distribution and the effort distribution. So we have all the sails and all the stack on the boat, and we're moving that back and forth depending on where we think it's best for the foils. And that's changed massively as well. It's generally a lot further forward is where we'll tend to put.
I was wanted to make a bridge towards that because, like you already mentioned that the movement under foil is much different, let's say. But I wonder, is the sensitivity also much different? So when you pull a chute or whatever, you tighten something. Maybe on an average boat, you have an average like reaction time to the input that you're putting into the machine, let's say. Is that also a lot heightened, a lot more direct, for example, when you're on the foils and it just, kind of bounces into new speeds or things like that, much more easier as opposed to normally?
I wouldn't say when you make a small trimming adjustment, it kind of does the same thing still. But one thing you do notice is you'll have one setup on the boat, which you think is the right setup, and the boat might not feel that fast or right. And then suddenly you might make a radical change, like a big ease on the sail, or you bear away 5 degrees, or maybe you change sail altogether, and suddenly you just find a foiling mode, and with that, kind of the change in mode is exponential, and suddenly the boat's leaping out the water and jumping, and with that you have to adjust the foil rake and things like that to compensate for it.
That's something that I really wanted to get to, because as I understand it, the difference between, let's say, not foiling yet and foiling is very different. So when you hit you hit, like, say, the entry speed where the foils really start to work, the boat really transforms, a little bit like a motorboat would once you're on the plane. It's a completely different thing than not. Can you talk a little bit about that, like about that change? And also, I think what you were getting into now is that you have kind of your sail set up pre-foiling, let's say, but then as soon as you start foiling, the whole boat becomes like a different boat, as I understand it a little bit.
No, exactly. It's pretty much that. So, firstly, when you go from non-foiling to foiling, you'll find that you need a lot less sail up. We've reduced, we reduce our sails much earlier than we used to, because you just don't need it once you're in that mode. We can adjust the foil rake up to 5 degrees on the boat as well. So maybe when you're in a non-foiling mode, you'll have one, quite an aggressive rake, and then suddenly the boat will jump out, and you've got to really, bring it back in. Otherwise, you'll end up with the bow pointing at the sky.
Wow.
But in terms of the way you sail the boat, you've just got to be aware that it's possible if you were to do a sudden bear away, the boat can go from doing 11 knots to fully flying and foiling, and you've got to really be careful to, not suddenly do that or be aware of it, that, you could go break something very easily if you're not in control of it. But it is a very different way of sailing when you have the foils. You've got that whole extra element of, the boat's not really in the water anymore. So what do you actually want to do with the sail setup, the stack, the position of everything, to adjust to that? And you do have to change the way you trim the sails and sheet everything on. And it's been a long learning process, I guess. I think, everyone would have almost liked a year or so more of just testing time, just to really see. But, we've got the next Vendée Globe, and I think the advancements in the next 4 years will still be pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, and of course, maybe also IMOCA's now in the Volvo Ocean next edition, so that'll be very. But then, of course, with I think with 6 people or 5 people crew on board, very large crews for IMOCA. So that will be, I think, really, really interesting to see how that's going to affect the race, I guess.
Nice.
What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's possible?
Yeah, no, I think the Ocean Race will be a really exciting race in these IMOCAs, because there is 100% you have to compromise sailing the IMOCAs by yourself. There's no doubt about that. If you had a crew of 4 or 5 people on the boat, you would push the boats in a different way, I think. And so this Ocean Race in the next couple of years will be a fantastic way to really understand the boats for the next Vendée Globe. If you were looking to do that next time. But I think this next, with 4 or 5 people on the boat, obviously it's a bit squishy on the boat. It's as hard to believe it is. It's a 60-foot boat. It's quite squishy for more than 2 people at the moment. So you have to think a bit about where you're going to put everyone. But I think it'll be really interesting. And also with the autopilot is obviously a massive part of the development in the Vendée Globe. To see what decision they make for the Ocean Race will be quite interesting.
I think probably no autopilots allowed, probably like in the normal Ocean Race, but I guess we'll see what happens. But it's nice that you make the bridge towards the autopilots, because I think we talked about some of the aspects of the foils. I think the foil rake also, there were a lot of questions. Maybe let's pause on that for 1 second also, because you have about a 5% ability to change it a little bit, angle it a little bit. Can you talk a little bit about
5 degrees, so it's limited by the IMOCA class to 5 degrees. So you first have to choose where you think you want those 5 degrees to be before the race. So we also had to do a bit of testing before to choose the angle. But effectively, what it is, you've got the top and the bottom bearing in the hull, and with that you can adjust the angle of the arm of the foil, and adjust the angle of attack and how the water flow will effectively go over the foil. So if you move it forward, you end up with an angle of attack that's more sharp, and therefore it will generate more lift and more righting moment.
Does that greatly change the boat speed at which you start foiling? So you already mentioned that you get more of a hop, so it's maybe a bit too intense maybe. But does it increase the speed at which does it make you foil quicker when you do that also significantly?
It all depends on what conditions, what angles you're sailing, and there's definitely not one foil rake that matches everything. That's 100%. But to have that adjustment is really interesting, and you're definitely not sailing around with a maximum foil rake all the time. Basically, you are having to adjust it a lot, and you can definitely feel the differences in the height that the boat is flying at. But there's so many factors that influence it as well. If you have depending what head sail you have, it completely changes because you've only got one foil. We haven't got any foils on the rudder. Have actually got this one pivot point of the foil, and as you adjust different head sails, it completely affects the pitch and the weight and the center of effort of the boat. And so with each sail as well, you have to make adjustments, and it's just another feature to be able to play with, which really does make a difference to
Yeah. It's also interesting that I think that the foils also, as far I can deduce from watching the different videos and so, does it also give the boat quite a bit of extra riding moment compared to what you used to, of course, do with the canting keel, but it's a little bit like the foil itself also keeps kicking the boat back, up, reducing some of the heeling every time it really bites. Can you talk about that also a little bit?
Yeah, no, you're completely right with that. There's probably it's quite a technical part of the design and performance of the boats, I guess, and it's something that you learn about. But it's also quite difficult to see if you're not actually on the boat. But the keel and the foil interact very closely, I suppose. With the keel, we have an angle of attack on that as well. And imagine you've got the foil and the keel like this, and this is what's generating the lift of the boat. And depending on how much keel angle you have as well, that will influence the angle of attack of the keel fin. So these working together in parallel will alter how much lift or how much speed or how much drag the boat has, depending on what you're trying to achieve at each moment. So while we're changing the rake, we'll also be changing the angle of the keel as well, because basically there are points where you end up with the keel being fully canted up, so in maximum righting moment technically, but once you reach certain boat speeds, the keel offers negative righting moment. So the keel is actually acting against the righting moment of the boat simply because of the lift that's generated on the keel fin.
Yeah.
And you really have to play with that as well to get the foil and the keel working nicely together.
Wow, I didn't even know that. So you're actually at the point now with speed that the keel in some ways is starting to affect the performance almost negatively, or at least that might be like maybe a new thing for new generations to think of. Damn, when we go 35 knots, the keel doesn't work anymore. We need to figure out something better.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Exactly. And, you think it's a, nearly 3-ton piece of lead at the bottom of it, and lifting something like that, there's got to be a lot of forces going on there. So
of course, yeah. The weight of the Maccas is also something that, like, my little boat of 12 meters is like 9 tons, right? And you guys are like 18, and you're weighing like a little less still. It's just so crazy to think about how thin it all is, but that it's all so strong.
Yeah. But no, this interaction between the keel and the foil has been really interesting this year, and it's just time on the water, just testing, and I'm sure Boris out there right now is learning. The learning curve is still so steep, and he's probably learning so much about the boat. So talking to him about it when he gets back.
Yeah. By the way, that's good for people watching, because you also have a dashboard where people can look at lots of data from the boat. I will put it in the comment to this video. So really interesting. I watch it myself also all the time. And you can see things like keel rake, speed, and like there's lots of data about the boat there. So for you nerds watching this, if you didn't know that yet, it's really, really cool. Find the link in the description. Okay, I think let's move on from the foils, and let's talk a little bit about the autopilot, because you mentioned that already. Also, I got just tons of questions about that, and people are just really, really interested. They all heard, of course, that many of the teams, investing so much in the autopilot, sometimes more than they are investing in the sails almost. So can you talk a little bit about that, and what has really changed between the, let's say, previous generation of those and now? Like, how has that happened, and what's really the benefit of that?
Yeah, so the autopilots, you can effectively call them your second mate on the boat. You have it's who's really going to be steering you while you're sleeping, while you're doing anything but concentrating on the boat. And with the foils, with the boats advancing so much now, a small 3% increase or whatever in steering performance to keeping the boat on the foil is a bit more complicated now. Will mean such a big 1 or 2 knots in boat speed difference. So it's really important to have these autopilots working very well and steering as well, if not better than yourself for a very long period of time. So the main kind of advantages to the autopilots we have now is you can manipulate them a lot more yourself depending on what you're trying to achieve. So a lot of the time with foiling, you're trying to, in order to get the foils to work perfectly, you're you want to set the autopilot. You want to try and maintain a constant heel, because that keeps the foil arm in the water at a level amount and helps keep level and stable flight. So we have you can set the autopilot to maintain a specific heel, and so to steer the boat as aggressively as it likes, just to maintain this heel and keep the boat foiling, because that's what we see as important. But there's so many other variables now that you can adjust the autopilots to, and you can manipulate it to.
Can you name a few of those type of variables that you're talking about? Yeah,
so you can do it on things like the VMG of the boat. If you're trying to get down to a waypoint or something, and you want to maintain a certain, you want to try and get as best speed to this angle, to prevent the boat from just continuously heading up, or it will basically do a calculation to figure out how to keep the boat going as fast but as low as possible at the same time. And it's kind of much more compared to a typical true wind angle. If you set your autopilot to true wind angle of maybe say 140 as your VMG downwind angle, it's often the boat might drop off the foil and then you're stuck going much slower at a low angle. Whereas these more complicated autopilots will help you to kind of balance between speed and pointing towards where you want to go. So another thing,
it's a bit, if I can summarize it for the people, it's a bit like a previous generation, or like the autopilot that most of us have on the boat. You can set a course based on the compass, or you can set an angle to a wind, for example, and the autopilot will just do what you want. But it will not compensate for unexpected bad consequences, losing speed or direction or whatever. Whilst the autopilots that you're working with, in a way, you're giving them what you want in the same way, but the autopilots actually compensate for things like, oh, if I just steer at this compass angle, we're going to lose some ground, or the boat's going to go in a totally different heeling angle, and that will screw up the setup. So it will find a better middle ground to get you what you want, really, let's say.
Yeah, exactly. And you have to set it up yourself a bit. There's a lot of adjustments with fine settings, adjusting the speed at which it steers, and there's speed at which it steers, how it compensates, and then you can set it to other things like you can have a heel safety. So if the boat's heeling too much, if it's going to broach, it will prevent you from doing that. We have Oscar overlay, which stops it from, if the Oscar cameras at the top detect something in the water, the autopilot will do its best to steer away from the object or
that's
slow
actually
the boat down.
Interesting. Let's make a little side track there, because I also get a lot of questions about, we have a lot of UFOs and collisions, of course. Sherelle already one victim, and we don't exactly know what happened to Alex, but it might have been that he hit something in the water, who knows. So can you talk a little bit about, because I don't think all the boats are using it, right? But many of them do have some kind of collision radar or sonar on board now. What are you guys working with?
What we have basically is you've got these cameras at the top of the mast, which is the Oscar system. It's a couple of infrared cameras and a visible camera, and it's using artificial intelligence to identify objects in the water. And what we've done now is we've basically plugged the Oscar into our autopilot system. So when the Oscar detects something for say 3 seconds, firstly, the Oscar's always sounding an alarm when it sees something. So hopefully Boris will get out of bed and go look himself. But with this overlay, it will, after 3 seconds, it will automatically steer the boat to slow it down. So upwind, it will point it into the wind, downwind, it will bear it away. So it's kind of the first stages of developing, a collision avoidance, autopilots. And we've made a lot of tests before the start of the race. Obviously, we don't want it just suddenly steering away when we don't want it to, but it's nice to have that extra layer of security while you're in the bunk. Definitely. Hopefully it would prevent a collision at sea for Boris, should the situation happen. But it's kind of a really exciting technology to see happening, because where's this, we see all these things about self-driving cars, maybe you see how this technology goes in the future, but you have self-driving ships and things like this. But
Yes.
So it's really interesting to be using.
I hope it won't happen, because us as captains, we won't be we won't be necessary anymore. But I did get a lot of comments from people also saying, they should put at least one AI-driven boat in the Vendée just to see how it will compete, right? The only problem is how it's going to do the sail changes. Nobody knows that yet, but maybe Elon Musk will make a robot at some point and enter. That would be something. And if Elon joined the Vendée Globe with like 3 robot helpers on board run by an AI, and he'll just sit there and watch while the boat does everything himself.
Yeah.
That'll be
that'll be the future. But
yeah.
No, it's the autopilot's an interesting rules, because there's obviously limits within what's outside assistance and what's not. So
of course,
things like I couldn't connect to the boat and steer the boat from the shore or something. So
yeah. No, of course.
But it's amazing how the technology allows for things like that to be possible. 4 years ago, you wouldn't really.
Yeah, final thing on that, on the autopilot. So, because as you say, it is quite involved. So I imagine that you're constantly, adjusting it. I mean, even when I'm sailing with a normal autopilot, every once in a while you're changing your course a little bit degrees, or you're adjusting a little bit, just to optimize. Is that also something that Boris is probably involved with really every day, every new course, really, messing around with the autopilots, trying to, again, find that ideal setting based on the new parameters? Is that like a real big part of the race?
It's a massive part. And with each, there's no 2 conditions really that are the same in terms of, wind and wind direction. We have general ideas of which autopilot overlay would want to use and roughly what settings, but there's always the fine details Boris will be constantly playing with. And one thing he can do, he'll be sat in the bunk probably, and because he spent so much time on the boat now, he'll really be able to hear and feel the boat. Is it happy? Is it sailing right? Could I be going faster? And he can sit in the bunk with his iPhone, and he can be adjusting the autopilot sensors on his iPhone. And that's the 100% part of the race, is trying to get those few percentages 24 hours 7 days a week. That's what matters. And if he's racing like this, for sure he'll be constantly adjusting it. And that's the advantage of these autopilots, is it makes it a lot easier to achieve these settings. I guess it allows you to really manipulate the pilot to steer it exactly how you want it to, and that's what the advantages of these autopilots.
Yeah, I'm curious, man. It sounds really cool. Like, I'm imagining, that would be awesome. Let's move on a little bit, because I think, it's very much in line with what we've been talking already. Of course, the race is long. The race is very, very long. And already we've seen several examples where it's very much a speed versus durability, and that famous quote, to finish first, you first have to finish. Can you talk a little bit about the breakerages in the fleet so far? The fact that we had Coram break his mast, of course, which is the same mast that you and several of the other boats are carrying. So can you talk a little bit about that whole aspect of the race and the point kind of where we are in now?
Yeah, it's very tricky to prepare for this race, and the simple answer to that is basically because you can't predict what's going to break on the boat. Like you couldn't fill the boat with a spare of everything. So you have to, because it would just be too heavy. So you have to really kind of guess, or really sit down and think about what you want to bring, so that it can be used for multiple things to repair the boat. So and there's also the balance of we've got these amazing foiling boats, but how hard can we push them? We've never pushed boats like this before, to have the foils of this size in the Southern Ocean. And what's the objectives of each team? Is it to push it to the absolute limit and try and just win it? But there's 50% chance that you might damage the boat, because it's you're pushing it past its limits. Oh, that's the doorbell.
Oh, we got nothing here. Pushing into the absolute limit, but then making we've had to make this table of working out what's the best
set up and what spares to bring in. We saw Corum break their mast, and this is one of the one design masts. So if you build a new boat, this is what you have to use now. One of these one design masts, and they basically, there's kind of limits set out by these for these masts, and we have to try and stick with them. And we'll be interested to see what actually caused Corum to break their mast. But
do you guys actually have any info on that? Like, is it also, as soon as that happened, right away an issue within your team where you had a meeting like, hey, do we need to look at this? Or,
yeah, I mean, I'm sure it will be shared in the future. But Boris knows kind of the limits. He has alarms all over the boat to say this is when we should start, and this is where you should really start backing it down, stop pushing it. But we'll have to see. We'll have to find out the reasons why Corum's mast broke. I'm sure there's a good reason, but Boris has his limits, and I'm sure it's kind of off-putting to see one of his competitors go and have that happen to him. But
do you think that right now, because this is also something that goes in the comments a lot, we hear a lot of people ask, we hear of top speeds of these boats, 35 knots basically on occasion. How much do you think that the long distance highs are being hit right now? That the entire fleet, because it's still early in the race, is really still holding back. Seeing top speeds 22, 23, sometimes 24 knots. Is that still really big start of the race? And do you think that by the end they'll all be going 30 in general? Or how do you think that the setup is right now? Like, what's your feeling?
So basically, it's a tricky balance for the boats. What with the new foils, like you say, we can achieve speeds well into the 30s, and we haven't really seen any boats averaging 30 knots, which is quite interesting. But I think it's because the times you would have seen that would have been before the equator, really, when you get good trade winds and situations like that. But there was never really ideal conditions, I don't think, to sail those sort of speeds. I'm sure the boats have touched 30 knots, but in terms of averaging that, it's pretty difficult to find the right conditions for that.
Is it the violentness of it? Is it the fact that it just becomes like I think Alex Thompson mentioned that in an interview 2 days ago, where he said, we had the boat at about 38 knots, but it's just so uncomfortable that it's almost not doable to physically, humanly sustain that for any really long periods.
I mean, I think you wouldn't feel like the boat was going to make it 8 days around the world if you really pushed it at 100% all the time. It's just it's brutal on the boat. It's you wouldn't feel comfortable, although you might be able to deal with it. You wouldn't feel comfortable with the sounds and the feelings of the boat. And you get you get all the limits set by the designers and things like this, and if you're jumping out of them, then it just doesn't seem right, really, does it? Going against what the experts say. So especially on a race this long. So I think that's probably why you kind of see the boats doing 23, 24 knots. But the tricky thing as well is the tracker takes an instant moment every 3 hours, and it takes an average of every 4 hours and 24 hours. And it's so it doesn't show you the detailed ins and outs of it, which is why it's great that we have this dashboard of Boris, because we can see slightly more detail.
In the comments below, people, all boards with real speeds.
You would love to have it for every boat in the fleet, and
definitely, right?
To just know how fast, exactly what are they doing on each boat at that moment. But that's part of the game, isn't it?
Exactly. Next Vendor Globe will have live pictures by then. Everybody will have HG on board and stuff, and it will be technically possible. That'd be really, really cool. Let's see. So we answered that. We answered about the carefulness. I think I'll go into some. Let's talk a little bit about the science that you guys are doing, because that's also really interesting, of course, as you explore, being the part of the environmental ocean protection thing. So can you talk a little bit about the science that you guys are doing on the boat?
Yeah, so we've had a something called an ocean pack. It's kind of a sensor to be able to measure the CO2 in the water, the concentration of dissolved CO2 in the water, the salinity and the water temperature. And we've been doing this since 2018, but the Vendée Globe will be the first real time that we've managed to get a full loop of the planet in terms of data, hopefully.
I saw it go down, actually. It's interesting when you look at the CO2 levels, because I saw the graph, and it's like the start of the race, and then like the more they go out of the, well, where we live, let's say, it just keeps going down and down and down. So that's interesting.
It's very interesting what causes the fluctuations in it. One big fluctuation we were told by our scientists was due to theta. So when you have a big tropical storm like that, you get a lot more mixing in the water. And the way the water mixes, it changes the layers of how much CO2 is in the water.
Yeah, so you get a whirlpool.
It's really fascinating to be able to identify the different causes of these changes. And it was really cool to have that data or to understand the weather features that were causing the dissolved CO2 differences in the water from theta.
Yeah.
And there's obviously the kind of the main that these scientists know about, but the fleet are now going to the Southern Ocean, and there are some places where they don't have any records ever of collecting data in the Southern Ocean. So it's really exciting to be able to go around with this machine, which is fully automated, and be able to kind of collect this data and put it on this database, and can be used to really help scientists hopefully to understand what's going on with, or how the ocean's reacting to the amount of CO2 that humans are putting into the atmosphere, and then the ocean is absorbing 30% of it roughly. So and then with all this data as well, we send it to the WMO, Meteorological Organization, and that can be used for helping produce more accurate weather forecasts, as it's, we're giving them real-time data from the boat. So that's kind of one of the other advantages of sending the data back. So it's a really interesting part of the race, and it's kind of an objective that's been part of the race, as well as doing as well as possible. It's been really important for us to make sure that this is all up and working, and we're really excited if we can go and do a whole lap of the planet worth of data.
Yeah. And I think you also put overboard a probe, right?
Yes, yeah. You put a drifter just north of the equator, and this is basically a float that's going to descend and ascend in the ocean every 10 days, I think, and it will ping data back to various databases across the world to then be used. We'll join the other 3,000 or so floats in the ocean.
Yeah, that's interesting. That people don't realize how large the ocean is as far as research goes. And of course, with CO2 and climate change being so driven by ocean temperature, it's very interesting to, I had some discussions also in companies, like how do we measure like general temperature for something the size of an ocean, for example. Yeah. And it's like really interesting once you start to get into that on a concrete level and say, well, are you measuring at the surface? Okay, the ocean is like so many millions of kilometers, and we have like 800 points or something in the world where we're measuring. How can you increase that and go through the layers? And it's such a fascinating, really massively complex problem. So it's really cool that, races like the Vendée, and we saw with the Volvo Ocean also, that they're kind of doing their part to, increase the science, and I think also the interest in the science around that is just really amazing. Yes. Before we get to the questions of the many viewers, I wanted to also ask you maybe more a personal story, because as a sailor myself, I think that one aspect that is really hard to get across to people who don't sail or who are just interested in it and kind of wondering what it's like is when you're solo sailing, especially, and you're in tough weather, and the boat is really booking, sea state can be large. Can you maybe share one story of you on the Sea Explorer of some really, let's say, dicey situation that you got yourself into, and a bit how that felt? Can you tell a little bit about that? Because I think that's also very interesting for people to hear those type of personal stories.
It's interesting. I've been sailing with Sea Explorer at Corps de Monaco for the last year. I did the Transat Jacques Vabre race, so from France to Brazil with Boris double-handed. It's a completely different boat this year, and I think one of the things that will stick with me was when we went up to the Fastnet Rock as a training session. So Fastnet Rock's just south of Ireland, and we went and did a training session up there earlier this year, and it's basically when we hit the top speed on the boat. So we'd hit 37 knots that day.
Oh,
and,
wow.
We're using these hydro generators as well on the back of the boat to help produce energy. This is kind of one of the big learning features this year. But as we had it in the water, when the boat was going that speed with the hydro generator down, it suddenly was ripped off the back, and the hydro generator is flying around in the air all of a sudden. And it's a bit of a tricky maneuver to try and slow down the boat without the hydro generator ripping through the entire back of the boat. So
now I understand why Boris took it out, because there's one video where he's booking like 26 knots or whatever, and he literally says like, yeah, I took the hydro generation. And I was thinking to myself, like, why did he take it out? Isn't that perfect? You can like get a lot of energy. But I guess that's probably
that'll be us from the shore going, thank you, Boris, thank you for keeping the boat in one piece. But he's always thinking about it, so it's good.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, that's really cool. And actually, that brings me to one other topic that I almost forgot before we get to all the viewers' questions. And that is managing electricity, because of course, all this autopilots and different things takes a lot of amps, I guess. You have a lot of solar on board. You obviously have the hydro generation. But can you give the people at home a little bit of insight into how much power, amps and stuff the boat actually uses when you're, in racing?
So it's when he's got everything switched on, and I mean, satellites, foil loads, all sorts of things on autopilots. It's about 12 amps is kind of what we'll average. And, during the day, we'll generate 16 up to 20 on a very good day in terms of solar generation. And with the hydros, you'll generate anywhere between 12 and 24. So he can sufficiently keep the boat going, even with all this power generation. If it's a less optimal day, for example, if there's more clouds or if he's not going very fast, the doldrums is always a worry. He can start to switch things off, so he can really reduce it as much as possible, depending on what he thinks is most important. But
and how large is the battery pack that you guys have on board?
How large is it? It's an 8-pack.
Is it lithium? What do you have?
It's lithium, and there's, how much would we get out of it? I'm not sure the exact amp hours we would get from it, but it's pretty big. It gives us about, if we were to not charge at all and we were to use 12 amps, it'd give us about 12 hours worth of power before we need to.
Okay. So you could get through a quiet night or anything like that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And also, when we're actually just using the autopilot is about 2 to 3 amps.
Okay.
And that's kind of all the electronic screens and things like that as well involved in it. So that's the whole autopilot system. So
so you got basically plenty of power. Do you know how many watts of solar there is on the deck in total?
No, I'm not sure. What size? Or
it's about 6 square meters. The amount of watts that you guys have out there, like the amount of watts in solar. But if you don't know,
it's about 6 square meters of panels. So whatever that transfers to. But
probably something like 1,000 or something. Maybe.
Okay.
Nice. Okay, well, I think we'll move to some of the very interesting questions that all the Seawolves from at home have shared with us. So thank you for that also. Nice. I'm reading through the questions here real quick, and I think that we actually discussed most of it, interestingly enough. So that's very nice. Maybe let's end with the last one by Eddie Doherty, who asks about alarms. So he asked, can Will go over all the alarms on the boat? I think that's kind of a good, a funny one. Maybe you can talk shortly about that, and then we'll finish.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. We've got a lot of alarm systems on the boat. This is kind of a new development of the year. And with all these different data variables, we've got loads in all the rigs, we've got the loads in the foils, and we have the threshold set on the alarm. So it's annoying because they're constantly going off, but for very good reason. But in total, there's about 30 alarms. We've got about 6 or 7 for the loads in the mast. So some in the outriggers, one in the J2 pin at the front, and then 2 in the winches as well. So that will kind of tell us when we're overloading the rig. Then in the foils, we have fiber optics. So that's measuring the bend of the foils. So once we reach the thresholds of those as well, the alarm will go off and we'll know to kind of reduce the loads on the foils, whether that means pulling them in a bit or reducing the rake, things like this. And then you have the other alarms for charge, for the hydro generator, for you can effectively set an alarm on any bit of data that's coming to the computer, which is really helpful. And it's so handy to have that as a solo sailor. But it took a while to get the alarms in the right place. You know, you've got to try and make it that they're not constantly going off and then you choose to start ignoring them. But also we need them to go off at the right times as well when we really think we're overloading the boat. So it takes a lot of development, but they're pretty helpful.
Yeah. Well, I guess that, and I think also for the people watching this, like we've gotten a real image of, you know, how complex it is to manage a boat like this, especially, you know, on your own with the autopilot, with the sail changes, with the weather, with all the different things are going on. You guys are really, I always say that when people ask like, what is solo sailing like? I always say it's the closest to being an astronaut you can be, you know, while still remaining on the planet. And I think you guys are really doing that. So yeah, I guess thank you very much for joining the Seawolves today. Well, I feel like we still have like 3 hours more that we can discuss. So I think we should do this again sometime later soon. But for now, I want to thank you very much. I guess you have another call to go to, and we're going to hop into the weather analysis and predictions for all the virtual races and all the people watching today. But thank you very much, and I guess we'll talk again soon.
Great. Thank you very much for that.
Very interesting, huh? Really great stuff. So let's look at the leaderboard. Let me bring you guys in here. And yeah, very interesting things going on. Of course, we talked about it yesterday and the day before, and it seems now that literally everybody except Sean LeCam, he's doing it again, has basically changed course and started to move due south in order to kind of go underneath the St. Helena system and make their way that way. When we look at the windy map, let's go here to today. Yeah, so you can see that this is now very clearly developing pretty much exactly how it was predicted yesterday. And yeah, we can see that very interestingly, so both Apivia and Linked Out, both still in the lead, but both of them very much heading for the wrong side of that system. So, you know, their speeds right now, you know, let's see here. So yeah, 3.8, 4.2 knots, not very fast, going upwind, and basically same for Thomas Rouillant, basically 9, sometimes 10 knots. While on the other hand, I think we're probably going to see some, we see here 9, 10 knots also still right now, but they should be able to go a lot faster once we fast forward about 24 hours, because as we can see, it really is moving towards the east very fast. And so this is midday tomorrow, and then we're basically seeing that the entire fleet, except for the 2 leaders, is going to have absolutely great wind. They also added the ice exclusion zone in here now. Thank you. Maybe they were watching yesterday, I don't know. But very helpful. And so it is possible. They have the space within the zone to actually get through there. So yeah, I think it's very close to what I predicted 2-3 days ago, that basically we're going to see this kind of convergence. So we have the 2 leaders that are going to have to move right through the middle of the St. Helena system now, which will definitely slow them down a little bit. On the other hand, they have a much shorter path to go, while basically the rest of the fleet, which is kind of being led by both Sam Davis and I think Bureau Valet 2 is in there also. They are making just great headway. Alex Thompson, you know, seems to be making okay speed again also. And they're all, you know, basically set to receive great wind. And I think they'll be, you know, very much making good speed soon. Likely, I think that they're going to end up around the Cape pretty much all together. So I think that the 2 leaders will probably still arrive into the good wind, so around here, you know, lower in the system, probably around Friday or Saturday. So let's see how it develops, it gets closer to them. Yeah, so I think definitely Thursday by the end of the day or so, I think that both, at least Apivia, but probably Linked Out as well, will be in very, very good wind. But by that time, I think we'll see that Sam Davis, Bureau Vallée 2, maybe Alex Thompson if he really picks up full speed again. And we also have, of course, Sea Explorer there. We have Sebastian Simon here. Just a pretty, pretty much all of the middle of the fleet. Many of the foilers will all basically be able to move into the Southern Ocean now via this way. And then the really long track around Antarctica starts. And of course there we're going to see very different sailing conditions, very different setup. We should see the foilers' advantage really develop there also. And I guess that's something we can really dive into tomorrow, as this show is already going way over an hour, but that's more or less the weather for now. So thank you all very much for watching. And if you want to see more amazing interviews like this, please like, subscribe, share the video far and wide. If you want to become a backer, helper, patron, go to our website seawoolstv.com and help me make more amazing content like this here today. And looking forward to have some nice coffee with you all again tomorrow. Ciao.